Welcome to Better Business with Magic. I'm your host, Nolan Webster, where I pull back the curtain and expose the concepts of magic that can help you in your business, your personal life, be more creative, and overcome obstacles. So stay tuned. Welcome to another episode of Better Business with Magic. My guest for today is Marcus, who's an executive and a leader who thrives on bringing visions to reality. He has been a trusted advisor and consultant for the previous 3 years, working with manufacturing firms and the Department of Energy in strategy and marketing. Marcus started his career as a Marine officer and helicopter pilot, where he honed his leadership and operational skills. Upon leaving the active duty, he got his hands dirty as an early-stage employee at a startup in the lighting industry. In addition to Marcus's professional work, he is a mentor and community leader at Bunker Labs, which is a startup accelerator that supports military veteran founders. His previous experience includes strategy, marketing, operations, management, and supply chain strategy. He holds a BA in computer science and Spanish from the University of St. Thomas, as well as an MBA from the Carlson School of Management, University of Minnesota. If anybody can help me to connect the concepts of magic to business, is this person right here. Marcus, thank you and welcome.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm really stoked to be on the show here and excited for our conversation.
Thanks. There's so much that you've done that I think our listeners can use and can help and try to make this merge between concepts of magic and business. You've done a lot. You've done private stuff. You've done startups. You've done government work. So I'm really interested to see what you have to say about some of these concepts and how people can actually use them.
Yeah, absolutely. I've found the more I learn and the more breadth of things I get exposed to, that I see patterns and linkages to all of them, and having the opportunity to talk about how street performance and magic ties to them is really exciting, because I see a lot of similarities and biases that people react to that can be helpful in business.
Oh, definitely. I think so too. And that's why I started this, is try to help people see more beyond just performing, that there's there's things that we do in magic as far as being creative and having teams and thinking outside the box, that teaching others can hopefully help them in their career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you've done a lot of startup work. You've with Bunker Labs. Can you tell me more about Bunker Labs?
Yep. So Bunker Labs is a national nonprofit that's headquarters actually in Chicago, Illinois, and its focus or its mission is to help military veteran entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, and so they really focus on entrepreneurship as a way to achieve their to help veterans achieve their dreams. It's some quick fun facts. Post World War II, the number of veterans that left and were entrepreneurs was around 50%. It was just slightly lower than 50%. And then every major, conflict thereafter, or war, if you will, it's dropped down to the current generation where it's less than 10%. But it's veterans, military members that are leaving the service that say they want to be entrepreneurs. It's up at about 25%. And then those that actually go forth and do it, it's below 10%. So there's quite a bit of a gap there. And Bunker Labs is trying to help those that want to pursue it. Give them the tools and help them along their way. Because in my opinion, and I think obviously in Bunker Labs' opinion, vets make great entrepreneurs because we're used to struggles. We're used to doing things with very little resources and making things happen. We're used to stress, and these are all things that are very prevalent in starting up a business.
So why do you think there's a gap between those that say they want to become an entrepreneur and those that actually pursue it?
I think it's a little bit of social proof. We were talking about that earlier. There's not a lot of the big successful startups that we've seen in the last decade, or really 2 decades, since 2000, right after the dot-com burst. I can't think of one who is a veteran, a military veteran. And if they are, they're not very vocal about it. And that's, so those are the really big companies. But even on a smaller scale, there's not a whole lot of veterans speaking out when they start businesses. And I think part of it is maybe they're just trying to like re-blend into society and move forward with their life. But yeah, that's a great question. I wish I knew why, because then I think it'd get us closer to solving it.
Is it the type of businesses they're trying to start? Do you think
Um,
maybe they're choosing bad businesses or have ideas that aren't or vetted or what?
I don't think so, but maybe. But my initial hunch would be no. I think it's just I really just think, it's a lot easier when you see somebody that's paved a path before you to say, oh, I can do that. I have similar skill sets. I've done similar things. But when it's very new and you don't see anybody else doing it's just a lot more internal emotional stress. So just having someone to look up to, even if you're in a completely different business, I think can do a lot for perseverance.
So what kind of startups have you seen that have been successful? What kind of businesses were they?
Oh, the whole range of things. Let's see. I've got just the ones that I've been directly involved with. We've got a healthcare company, which is amazing. So they're developing technology that women can wear when they're pregnant that monitors the fetus and can give you all sorts of data about what's going on with your baby as it's growing inside. So that's like a very kind of high tech company. I've seen a company that is a boutique fitness company, Alchemy 365. They're great as well. So that's more just like boutique, specialized fitness, similar to CrossFit, but blends a lot of yoga into it. The females health company I was talking about was Odinana. And then I've seen just typical businesses like things that keep the community running, like an HVAC company or a IT services company. So I've been lucky enough to see kind of a breadth of different companies start up.
Oh wow, that's incredible. Uh, One of the concepts that we use in Magic to help with businesses is this idea of insurgent thinking or fringe thinking, which is thinking on the edges, on thinking of the outside, of always being that newcomer into a business. Whereas if you think of the companies of the 1940s and 50s, very, very few are still around. The companies that are big now have only been around for a decade or so. And as long as they continue to change with the times, they'll continue to be successful. Jeff Bezos has famously said that he has told his employees that don't expect that Amazon is going to be around forever, because he knows that unless things change, they won't be able to sustain Amazon. And in this current climate of COVID, companies have to change and adapt to, social distancing, to contactless payments, to, just the whole change that's going on right now. So my thing is, do you find that type of thinking benefits those that are trying to start a new company?
Absolutely. So I'm one of my passions is jujitsu, and probably the listeners are like, well, what does jujitsu have to do with business, or what Nolan just said? But but one main concept in jujitsu is like if you're doing something and it's not working, then do something different. But that's really hard to implement sometimes when you're grappling and you're exerting yourself. But the same thing holds for businesses. If you keep doing the same thing indefinitely, eventually a competitor is going to come in, your customers are going to get bored with what you're doing. A pandemic's going to happen, and if you don't have the mindset developed to be agile and nimble and react to certain conditions, then I definitely think you're going to fall off, and other businesses are going to succeed. The caveat I have to that is it's a balance. You can't be just willy-nilly changing everything all the time. I'm a big believer in strategy. And strategy is a point of departure, like to focus everybody. This is the way we're going. This is what we think is going to happen. But once you start, when market dynamics change, when whatever changes, you have to be willing to adjust your strategy. I learned early age, before I was in business, back when I was active duty Marine officers, don't fall in love with your plan. The plan is the first step to get you there, get everybody set. But things change when people outside of your plan start having a say in what's going on.
Definitely, yeah. Plans do change a lot on active duty military. Now, you mentioned strategy, and there's a three-step process in magic to create a great effect, a great show. And I think we can tie this to strategy and communicating that strategy. So the three steps is basically you start with the effect, the illusion you're trying to create. So in business, it would be the product or service. Then next would be the story that you're telling with that effect. Make it relatable somehow. Same thing in business. I think those that can tell their story the best and a meaningful story are the most successful. And then the last thing is putting that in context for the audience, having them understand why this effect is important to them, why they're watching you on stage. I think if you're able to convey to your customer why this product is important to them through story, it makes it much more successful. Apple does a great job, I think, as far as communicating their story and having context of why people need their products in their lives.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Can you tell me a little more about step one when you say like you're setting up the illusion? What does that mean?
Yeah, so it's basically finding an effect or an idea or concept that we want to put across to the audience and making sure that it has some sort of relevance, making sure that it's magical, making sure it communicates an idea. So if I was to do, let's say, a card trick where the four aces appear out of nowheres, no, so why am I doing that to show you? Is it because there's a story of a gambler I'm trying to tell you? Is it because I'm trying to demonstrate my sleight of hand skills? What's the magic effect I want to get across? Um, if I want to read your mind, is it because I know some psychological effects? Is it because I know every thought that you have? What's what's the effect I'm trying to get across to you? Whereas no, the product, and then from that illusion, I would build a story around that. Is it no, my grandfather was a gambler, and he showed me a cool way to produce the four aces, and relate that to you somehow. David Copperfield does know a great job as far as storytelling and things of that nature. His grandfather trick is great as far as whenever he was growing up, his grandfather always doubted him being a great magician. And then one day he was on stage in Broadway, and there's this old man in the back of the theater, which looked a lot like his grandfather. Show was over. He went to the back. The old man was gone. Years later, his grandfather died. They were going through his attic, and he found ticket stubs to his show. So it was him. And he ties that to an effect. So he's able to use the effect, which is a lottery number routine, with this amazing story about his grandfather, and have that emotional hook with his audience. And I think if somebody can, in business, take a great product, use a great story to tell it, and hook their audience in some sort of context, or the customer in some sort of context, that will help increase sales and increase return customers. It will increase awareness.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So that makes me think of um, a fellow by the name of Simon Sinek, and I think it's this. He says the same thing, but maybe just in different words. So one, he's got a great what is it? TED talk, and I think if you just Google Simon Sinek, why, how, what, you'll find it. It's like 15 to 20 minutes long. But anyway, he suggests, and that the research that he's done suggests that if you communicate in a way where you tell people why, like based off an emotion of this is gonna make your life easier and you're gonna be happier, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then you tell them how is this thing, in this case a product, gonna do that, and then at the very end, the last thing you say is what, um, and it's counterintuitive to how most people talk, and even marketers have gotten better, particularly because of his research and his talks. But still, the tendency, when you and I are talking right now, or at least me, I don't say you do. We tend to talk in the opposite way. So we go what, how, why, and and that doesn't trigger emotions, because as soon as we start saying what, you people tend to like kind of shut off their brain and lose focus. And like you said, Apple does an amazing job at this. This is a bit dated, but when they first came out with iPod or even the iPhone, to bring it a little closer to the current decade, they convinced everybody that they, by using Apple products, they were individuals, and it created this strong sense of independence, and I am who I am, and et cetera, et cetera. But the funny thing is, everybody had the same product because it was such a hit. So they convinced everybody that they were individuals by using their product, but everybody used the product. So it was like this kind of group mentality, which was great. I mean, they've done really great with their marketing.
They did, and you mentioned iPods, and that brings up this other concept that we use in Magic called the one ahead principle. Whereas, let's say I wanted to make a dollar bill vanish and reappear inside your pocket. Well, first, I would get one ahead by placing that dollar bill in your pocket, then have another one, a duplicate, vanish that one, and then magically it appears inside your pocket. So I'm one ahead of what's going on. Apple, with the iPod, went one ahead with those many hard drives by buying up the entire supply chain, knowing that at some point people would try to duplicate what they're doing. So Steve Jobs went ahead, bought up as many of them as he could find, so that once this came on the market and other people had ideas about it, they couldn't duplicate it. So he was staying one step ahead of the competition. Soft soap, whenever soft soap first came out years ago, they did the same thing. They bought up all of the pumps that were being used for their product, knowing that Dove and Ivory would want to do the same thing. And it's just staying that one step ahead of your competition, knowing what they may do and preventing them from doing it, or at least holding them off to where it takes them a long time to catch up to what you're doing.
Yeah, it seems so logical, right? But most people in businesses, to that matter, are focused on the immediate thing that's right in front of them. I think it takes a real thinker, an orthogonal thinker, or a strategist to think secondary, tertiary order effects of, this is where we're going. How do we sustain our market advantage or our, what we've got going down the road when new entrants come into the market? And just like you said, being ahead of the game, thinking down the road, a few years is incredibly helpful. And it's interesting that you bring up that same concept in Magic.
Yeah, we use it in more ways than that, but again, it's just funny how, just again, ideas can come from different industries, from different people, and being open-minded enough to listen to somebody else and see what they're doing, I think can help other people in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you talked about being aware enough to change and adapt. So with that, I want to go with teams and collaborating. How important is it, have you seen in startups and in other companies and businesses, to have a team to either bounce ideas off of, to work with, and to collaborate with?
So I think it's incredibly important. One thing, I'm just starting a new business right now. And one thing I was looking for when I joined the team, so I was asked to join the team, is what are the strengths and weaknesses of the team? And hopefully, I try to be self-aware of myself and what my weaknesses are. But I look for those that I'm going to be on a team with, that they have strengths in the areas where I'm weak. And there's going to be some overlap, like a Venn diagram. We're going to have strengths that we both have. But it's important. So one, that the entire team can get stronger. There's almost a synergistic effect, right? Where you get 1 + 1 and you now have 3, because you have overlapping strengths, but you also have strengths in areas where the other is weak. And that's huge, just to keep the system functioning. But it's also great because areas where I think I might be weak, if my partner or somebody on my team bounces an idea off me, I have a completely different viewpoint from them. So I'm a huge believer in diversity of thought, diversity of people when you join teams.
Do you see teams that are generally made up of the same uh, background or skill set, or is it teams of, one's great at marketing, one's great at supply chain, one's great at communicating, one's great at strategy?
Say a little more. I want to understand the question better.
So from a magic point of view, if I'm creating a new show, or if I'm ready to do a festival or something of that nature, I may collaborate with not only another magician, but uh, a theater producer. I may try to find a director. I may find somebody who's great with lighting. I may find somebody that's great with audio. So not just a magician collaborating with another magician, but going outside my comfort zone into things that I don't know about, directing, producing, lighting, audio, visual, and things of that nature. So translating that to business, instead of a strategy person communicating with a strategy person, maybe strategy communicating with marketing, communicating with sales team, having somebody that has a degree in an MBA communicating with a chemistry person to work together some way, just a more diverse group in the team, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does. Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, I agree. I think having the diversity you just said, as far as background, whether it's academic or professional background, is super important. There's a movement it's been going on for a while, but it's getting more press, at least in the academic world. So when I was doing my work with the Department of Energy's manufacturing group, they were starting to focus on that, as well as bringing in people from outside the field of manufacturing. So what happens when you bring in a biochemist that has been very specifically focusing on like a very small niche, whatever part of, we'll just say, a virus, right? And you marry them with a materials engineer that is just the most brilliant person in polymers or aluminum or whatever the materials are. What sort of things can you get when you bring those two ideas together? And there's been some amazing developments. I mean, we're now to the point where those two different areas of thought are being brought together to develop like, what's the word I'm looking for, to develop med tech solutions, right? Because you can't just be so myopic on your one area, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does, yeah. So we have a startup, they have a team, they're thinking outside the box, they're collaborating, they're doing this fringe thinking. Now they have a business that's up and running. Now, in order to communicate that to either B2B or B2C, having a clear message and the perception of what it is that they do, and communicate that. Three things that we use in Magic is control the dialogue. So we do the scripting and stuff of that nature. We focus attention, which misdirection is kind of a misnomer. We don't misdirect attention. We very purposely direct attention. And then the last thing is understanding that everything communicates. So everything from the lighting, how we're standing, how we dressed, how relaxed we seem, what our left hand is doing, what our right hand is doing, where we're looking, everything communicates to the audience. So from a business standpoint, controlling the dialogue and focusing attention and understanding that everything that the business does communicates to the potential buyer, whether it's a consumer or another business. Do you have any thoughts and ideas on how business can actually do that?
Yeah. So when you were describing that, it's funny. My brain's always firing, and I develop graphs and images in my mind. That's probably consulting. I'm not happy unless I've got a 2x2 chart on the wall and I'm whiteboarding it. But it sounds very similar. So your 3-step process: control the dialogue, misdirect, and then everything communicates. It seems like it overlays on the traditional marketing funnel that marketers and business people will be familiar with. So an example: control the dialogue. At the top of the funnel, there's going to be hopefully a lot of potential customers, coming in, learning about your product. We'll call that the awareness stage. If if a potential customer comes to your marketing materials, whether it's your website or meets one of your people out on the street, wherever, and the message they get is different from everyone, they're going to be confused. And because attention spans are so short, they're going to move on to something that makes sense, right? We don't have a lot of patience in those situations to figure out, what you're selling, right? We'll just move on to somebody who knows what they're doing. Misdirect. I like the way you defined it as you're not trying to mislead anybody. You're guiding them, right? So that makes me think of, if you go further down on the buyer's journey, the customer's journey, further down in your marketing funnel, you're trying to guide them to a solution that meets their needs. And a lot of companies are doing that by content. Content's huge right now, digital content. I mean, we're on a podcast right now, but you've got blogs, you've got Twitter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All that is designed is to help. All of that content is designed to help guide a customer along their journey to the point where hopefully they buy your product. But if they don't, that's great too, because they probably would buy the product. Like if the content's not good and they realize that it doesn't fit their needs, then they move on and they find something else. And that's actually not a terrible thing, because I don't think anybody wants a customer that buys a product and then just has terrible reviews and just is a very unhappy customer. And then when you get down to everything communicates, that to me, that's post-sale. So you've guided a customer through their journey. Your solution is what they need. You haven't misdirected them. You've showed them solution, and they're like, yeah, that's what I need to solve whatever my problem is. After that sale is done, I think a lot of people forget to follow up. They just drop off, like, hey, I got my $1. Let's move on. Let's go find the next one. But if you want a loyal customer and a customer that will evangelize for you, what happens after the sale is I would suggest more important than what happened before the sale. You communicate with, if maybe there's an issue they have, you over communicate, you over solve their problem. So yeah, that was a long way of talking through the customer's journey laid over a marketing funnel and how it relates to your 3-step process.
Now, with that, we're going on this journey from a startup to a business, and now we're communicating our product or service to the customer. And one thing that we talked about briefly before we started recording was social proofing. So now we have this new product, this new service. That's always a challenge to be the first ones. Years ago, I was a street performer, and the most challenging part was getting those first few people to stop and watch a show, because nobody's watching it. They don't know if it's a good show, if it's a bad show. Is it funny? Is it horrible? So I'm always trying to persuade this first handful to stop. Either it's, hey, if you stop and watch the show, you don't have to tip at the end. Persuade them some way, hey, let's all have a great time and laugh and cheer and applaud real loud, and other people will come and join. No, I can't start a show until there's at least 20 people. And then there's a strange phenomenon where a crowd draws a crowd. So once those first 5 stop and they're cheering and applauding, then I get a few more. And then that draws a few more people. Then the crowd gets bigger. I do more of a show. They're applauding. They're cheering. The crowd continues to grow till there's a full circle show going on. So trying to translate that over to business, I know getting those first few is always hard, is always challenging. So what's some ideas you have besides telling them to not tip at the end and applaud and cheer real loud to get those first few buyers?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I couldn't agree more with how social proof works in your line of work, in street performing and magic, but also in business. I mean, the adage I've been told, and I also share with new startups, is your first customer is going to be your hardest. Like, do whatever you can to get your first customer, and then after that, get your first 10. Like that, things will get easier after that. But as far as how you get them, it's, I'm a big fan of guerrilla marketing, going out on the streets, doing things that are non-traditional to get people's attention. but I do think it depends on what you're offering. When I was consulting, you can still use guerrilla tactics there, but if I'm chasing people down the street and asking them if they want some strategy and management and marketing consulting, that's probably not going to work. So I think just having the mindset of knowing, like, yes, I need the first 10 are going to be hard, but things should get easier after that. Hopefully that helps.
It does. I'm sure there's some businesses that could probably get a few sales by being on the street and having people applaud and cheer real loud as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think of retail. I was at one of the outlet malls in my area, and I don't know for 100% certain, but I was nearly positive that they were using a blend of social proof and the scarcity principle. So I think what they were doing is they were, and this is pre-COVID too, so they're not worried about too many people being in the store. But they paid some people to stand in a line outside the store, and then they only let a few in. So then the line gets bigger, and only a few can go in. So there's this social proof just gravitating people to the store, the retail store. They see everybody standing out, and then they're very selective of having only one or two people in there. So then the scarcity principle takes over, and you get the fear of missing out. And those two combined are very, very powerful.
And with Instagram talking about doing away with likes or showing the like count, I know there's a lot of social media people that use that as social proofing. And with that going away, I wonder how that's going to affect anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I think of the influencers. That's how they get paid, right? That's how that whole new market developed really in the last, I don't know, probably 5 years or so. If you get so many followers, then you're deemed an influencer, and then marketers or businesses can base the impact that their message has based off the likes. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shifts.
And unfortunately, there's companies out there you can pay for them to like your page, to follow you, to watch your content, to increase those numbers, which I guess is great if you're getting paid strictly off of views and followers and likes. But it's kind of, I don't know, knowing that it's not organic, I think can be challenging, knowing that it's not organic followers, people that you can engage in, potential customers later on down the line.
It is a bit unnerving for sure. In a similar thread, I know there are professional comment leavers. What do you call them? Professional reviewers, and you can hire them to go give a bunch of glowing comments on your stuff. Say if you have a product that you're selling on Amazon, and potentially give a bunch of negative comments on others. So then it comes to this point of what we're using that to help guide our decisions. How do we trust it? And I think working on it to figure out a more transparent way to verify users and likes and everything.
Mm-hmm. Going back to some of the CEOs that you've worked with and founders, there's a concept that I've been going over and trying to push, which is the concept of the inner magician. And I want to see how much of this relates to those founders, those CEOs that pursue their businesses. And the idea of the inner magician is that we all have the ability to create magic. Magic starts from within. If you take the idea of the magician on the tarot card, he's the guy standing there with a magic wand. The magician's catchphrase of abracadabra means I create as I speak. So what the magician wants to have happen, he speaks it from a thought he has from within, and with the tools around him, either his magic wand, his props, or whatever, he can make that happen. So magic can happen from anybody that forms that idea or thought in their mind, speaks it, and then uses the tools around them to make that happen. And I think there's a lot of people that get into business that they lose that. They lose the idea that they have the ability to make this business successful, to make it profitable, and they lose that focus, and it fails. So with the people that you've worked with that have been successful, have you seen that they know what they want, they communicate that, and then use the tools around them to make it happen?
They do, yeah. So there's a number of things in there that made me think, and without getting into a too deep of a discussion on unpacking everything, I think you mentioned people when they go into business, they lose this idea that they can make things happen. They lose their creativity, but I think that happens really, really early. I think when kids lose it, right? Like you're a kid and you're imaginative and you can do anything. You can go slay dragons in your backyard because you put them there, and then or you can go ride them, like whatever you want to do. But for some reason, that creativity kind of gets in that imagination gets beaten out of us as we get older. Now, there's a whole topic there around education system, institutionalism, and et cetera. But we'll just leave it as that. But I think it goes. I think it goes deeper. But yeah, so coming back to the main point, I think there's something very powerful about vocalizing what it is you want to do, because that makes it real. If it stays in your head, then it doesn't become a tangible thing, and you don't really have anybody to hold you accountable for it, right? So whether it's a startup and you've got this great idea, the moment you start talking about it, it becomes more real, and then your mind is tuned to different opportunities that may support your idea. Some people call that the universe helping you out, and maybe that's true. But I also like to think that because our brains are so complex, that once you put focus on something, other things will start to pop up. Other tools in the world, other tools in your immediate surroundings will start to pop up that were probably always there, but now that you have a focus on it, you start seeing, oh yeah, I could use that to help me out. So I think it's a really powerful thing that startup founders, but even people just in regular corporate settings, maybe you have an initiative that you really want to push through, and it doesn't exist until you say something, and then you bring it up and it gets some attention, or maybe it gets shot down, but it sits in the back of somebody's head. And then if you really believe in it, you bring it up again, or you try a different way to bring it up and convince somebody that it's the right thing, or it's their idea. And then it starts to gain momentum, which is similar, I think, or really the exact same thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, I can completely agree that there's there's a TV show I reference from time to time. Have you ever seen Bar Rescue on TV?
No.
So this guy John Taffer, he's a award-renowned bar and nightclub creator, and he goes around to these different failing bars and nightclubs, and he helps to turn them around. And the first thing that is always the issue is the person that founded the bar or the owner has stepped away. They lost interest. They lost their passion for it. And the first good 15 minutes of the show is him like being a hard ass on him, saying, hey, this is no $500,000 that you're losing. Hey, your family's life is on the line. Your life's on the line. Your employees' lives are on the line. What happened? And a lot of times it's them that, again, maybe there was a death in the family, or they had a personal issue, or they got overwhelmed. And it always starts with him having to refocus them. And from my point of view, rediscovering their inner magician, which then they didn't re-engage and refocus to help their business grow, get out of debt, and be successful.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, I think I may have seen the episode. I just didn't know the name, but it's great. They essentially has to like relight the fire, right? Something extinguished their fire, and right. Things are like, let's not joke here. Business is hard. If it wasn't, then we'd all be business owners and be, make a lot of money. But so it takes a lot of grit, but the world will beat you down, and then sometimes that fire gets extinguished. So you gotta light it back up.
Right. No, and I think a lot of times people get into business because it sounds fun, and they get in over their head and they end up drowning. And going back to having teams and collaborating and using the tools around you, I think there are just some that are just afraid to ask for help or afraid to know that they're in over their head.
Yeah, so one thing that Bunker Labs does that I think is really cool is they have a self-assessment. So, if somebody comes to me, it's like, hey, I've got this idea, I want to be an entrepreneur. I say, great. Here's this thing called Launch Lab Online, and this is open to everybody, Launch Lab Online. So if you want to check it out, feel free. And it gives you like the basic overviews of the skills or the skills you need to get a business going. But it spends a lot of time on like doing it. Like, let's look in the mirror and figure out why you want to do this. Because if that isn't solid, you're gonna hit hard times and it's gonna fall apart. So like really think about it before you take a step forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think also, again, I hate going back to Bar Rescue, but I love the show. I love the concepts and what it can teach people about business. Is that there's a lot of people that say, "Oh yeah, no, owning a bar and restaurant would be fun," because they like to go there. And once they get into the grit of it and the grind of it, oh, I have to know how to order liquor. I have to track alcohol sales. I have to have a kitchen that's up to code and all these things that they didn't expect. And instead of hiring the right people and using the right tools to make it successful, a lot of times they don't hire those people and use those tools, and they end up floundering and asking for help when it's 30 days before they have to shut the doors.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So there
was, go ahead.
No, good.
Well, I was going to say I had a thought, but then it slipped me. I was listening to you, and then it disappeared. So maybe it'll come back.
So I was just gonna go over this new idea that I'm writing a more in depth concept about this on a blog coming up soon. But 5 ways to disrupt the industry or your organization. And the first thing is getaway. Is having the opportunity to get away with yourself, your team, or whoever, and just be free to create, collaborate, and innovate. The next thing you know is, again, having that team that you can work with to make those ideas come true. The third thing would be to have a mentor and being on the offensive, always creating, always coming up with new ideas. Having that insurgent concept that we talked about earlier. Then having a team to be the bad guys, to basically say, this is not going to work and here's why. This is going to fail because of this. I don't like this because of this. So that by the time you go to market with whatever your product or service is, you've already handled some of those issues that your customers may potentially face. And then the fifth thing is just understanding your inner magician of why you're doing what you're doing. Going back to the first thing as far as getting away, Bill Gates famously went away to a little cabin in the woods and just spent a week just going over papers and going over ideas. Google allows their employees a certain amount of time to just create new things. Magicians, we have magic camps, and we have conventions and stuff where we all just get together, exchange ideas and things of that nature. So I'm not sure how practical some of that is as far as getting away, and having the mentors and things of that nature. But just going over all of that as a collective, anything that sticks out that you've seen has worked in the past?
Yeah, that whole, I like this conversation because we're really overlapping things from your experience in skill sets and things I've seen. So getting away, I think, is huge, and that doesn't have to be a super extravagant, retreat or summit, I guess is what they're calling them these days. But just getting outside of your normal space, your normal work environment, will remove barriers that you might not even know are there. It'll remove creative barriers that are there. It'll remove some of the social dynamics and hierarchies that are written and unwritten in your culture, and like just creating a safe space to be creative is huge. it reminded me of the follow-on steps reminded me a bit of design thinking and kind of a subset of design thinking, or maybe it's even a complementary tool set to design thinking, which is the double diamond design concept. So you start out, so just think of two diamonds, like two four-sided diamonds sitting next to each other. You start out when you get away from everybody, right? Into a place, and you make it a safe place to be creative. And then you just start brainstorming, so I like to use sticky notes. You say, hey, this is the thing we're trying to solve. And you just brainstorm a ton of different ways. And every idea is a good idea. And you want the whole idea is get as much stuff up on the wall or on, however you're recording your ideas as possible. And you take time, and then at some point you can't do something with everything. So then you lump them together, you figure out, okay, these are kind of the same, these are kind of the same. And then you can vote. And then the idea is you diverge first, and then you converge. So you get them lumped into different sections. You're like, okay, now we're done with that phase. Let's talk about how do we narrow this down so we can actually get to a solution. So then you vote on them, you discuss them. There's a number of different tools that you can use to converge and get it down to a manageable amount of results. But then it's important to then converge again on them. So you get it down to a manageable number of results, and then maybe one step is you think of, okay, here's all the ways that are blocking it, right? So that could be your red team or your insurgent that you were talking about. And then so you get a bunch of things on the board again, and then you do the same process and you converge again, and hopefully that gets you down to like a few actionable results. And it's a really fun process. It's a great process. I've led a handful of workshops just following that process, and have seen some amazing results by doing so.
Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful concept that a lot of listeners can hopefully use.
Yeah, I think if you just Google double diamond design thinking, you should find something that can guide you through it. But it's pretty simple.
What came to my mind was in software development, agile thinking, where was it fail fast, fail often, fail forward?
Yep. Yeah, it's similar concepts.
Yeah. Well, Marcus, that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. I think there's a lot in here that people can use as far as being more creative or overcoming obstacles or just getting businesses off the ground. Is there any last minute thoughts, ideas, anything you want to plug or mention?
Let's see here. What do I want to plug? No, I had a great time talking through this. I think we've got a good flow going. I feel like we could probably keep talking for another hour or two, but I bet if we go over an hour, our listeners will start to drop off. That's a big commitment from them. No, I appreciate you having me on. I will do one small plug. I am starting up a new business right now. It's called RTN's Lighting, and it's linear lighting for architectural marketplace, so B2B. And what we're doing is we're using tunable white lighting, which can match the sun's normal flow. So it works with your circadian rhythm, and it has been shown to increase productivity, increase efficiency, and increase happiness. But also UVC lighting, which can scramble the RNA and DNA of a virus and render it unable to replicate. So if you could think of, take that a step further, COVID, if you can render that virus unable to replicate, it essentially sterilizes the room. So that's my new business. If anybody out there in podcast world is interested, I can leave my contact information. Talk to them about it.
Yeah, definitely. And what's the name of the company again?
Artience, ARTIENCE lighting, like art and science. Artience.
That sounds incredible to have the lights be able to do that.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's a technology that's been out there for a while, but within this specific market, there's not really anybody doing it. So
great. So if anybody needs lighting, that's the place to go. Marcus, thank you for your time. For listeners, thank you for your time. We'll be back next time. If you enjoyed the podcast, like, subscribe, follow, share it with other people. And until next time, bye. Thank you for listening to this episode. Hopefully there was something in here that you can take out and use. If so, that's great. That's the whole purpose of these podcasts, is to give you concepts that we use in magic that you can use personally. If you liked it, please subscribe, share, comment, like. And until next time, hope you have better business with magic.